Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty serious, a challenge that's causing real waves in science. It's this growing integrity crisis in published research. We're talking specifically about randomized clinical trials, RCTs. There's this worrying trend, more and more studies being pulled, retracted because of really serious stuff, manipulating data, falsifying results, even just making things up. So the big question for our deep dive today is, how is the scientific community actually dealing with this? How are they trying to fix such a fundamental problem? Our main source here is a really significant international consensus statement. It's from the Cairo Consensus Group, just published this year, 2025. Think of it as a kind of roadmap, a blueprint showing how experts globally are trying to, well, shore up trust in clinical research. And let's face it, that research affects every single one of us.
It really does. And that's why this is so critical. When research integrity gets questioned, it's not just, an academic debate or someone's reputation on the line. These confirmed flaws, they don't just damage public trust. They actually cost a lot of money. Governments, pharma companies, investors, they all lose out. And what's kind of shocking, really, is that even after a study is retracted, found to be flawed, it sometimes keeps getting cited, used in new research syntheses.
Wow, even after retraction.
Yeah, sometimes for quite a while. It just highlights how urgent this problem is, the very problem the Cairo Consensus is trying to tackle head on.
Okay, so let's unpack this crisis a bit. The source points to several reasons this is happening.
Yeah.
What do you see as the biggest hurdles for researchers and journals right now?
Well, the problems are quite systemic, actually. The source really flags three main issues. First, there's just been a lot of inconsistency. How concerns about published RCTs are handled varies wildly. It's often, a bit of a patchwork.
Okay, so no standard approach.
Exactly. Second, many journals, surprisingly, don't have distinct, clear policies specifically for looking into RCT integrity. This just creates confusion. Authors, editors, reviewers, they're not always sure what the rules are.
Right. Uncertainty all around.
And third, there's often a lack of validated tools or even just experience in actually investigating scientific misconduct properly. Put all that together, and you get evaluations of RCT integrity that are often, well, not good enough, sometimes inaccurate. It really drives home the need for a better approach, covering everything from prevention right through to correction after publication.
Okay, that makes sense. So this Cairo Consensus Group, international experts, different fields. How on earth did they manage to build agreement on such a complex issue? It sounds like a monumental task.
Oh, it absolutely was. And they used a really rigorous multi-step process, very deliberate. First, they put together this amazing stakeholder group. We're talking 48 participants, 18 countries, 6 continents. Yeah, and they used this thing called a snowball technique. Basically, initial experts recommended other experts built in this wide net. And the diversity was key. You had trialists, editors, statisticians, ethics folks, systematic reviewers, even patient reps and industry people, plus experts in forensic data analysis and AI, covered the whole life cycle of an RCT.
So all the different perspectives were in the room.
Pretty much. Then their foundation was solid evidence. They did what's called a scoping review, pulling together 89 relevant articles about post-publication integrity issues. So it wasn't just opinions, it was grounded in existing research.
Got it. Evidence first.
Exactly. Then came the Delphi survey rounds. 2 rounds, anonymized. It's a structured way to get expert opinions without direct confrontation. People rate statements, see aggregated feedback, then refine their views.
Right. Iterative process.
Right. The first round had over 100 statements. The second narrowed it down to 41 revised or new ones. They used a statistical measure, APMO, to objectively gauge consensus, plus a standard 70% agreement threshold just to double check.
It's very methodical.
It was. And finally, anything still undecided went to a meeting in Cairo, part face-to-face, part online. Simple agree-disagree vote needed 70% to pass. The end result of all that. They initially agreed on 104 statements. After some editing and merging to avoid overlap, they landed on a final set of 84 core standards.
84 standards. Okay, so after all that work, what does this actually mean for researchers, for journals, and ultimately for you listening, relying on this science for health info? What are some of the big changes they agreed on?
Well, these 84 statements really chart a new course. Let's look at, say, journal instructions and policies. The big theme here, overwhelmingly, is transparency. Massive agreement on this.
Okay, like what specifically?
Like requiring prospective registration for RCTs and systematic reviews that got over 93% agreement right off the bat.
That seems fundamental.
It is, but it gets stronger. They agreed 100% agreement in the final meeting that journals should require full, unredacted protocols and statistical analysis plans to be publicly available. All versions of them, too.
All versions, wow.
Yep. And journals should also require that the raw, identifiable data sets be accessible on request. Again, 100% agreement.
That's huge. Access to the actual data.
It is, and even the statistical syntax, the code used for the analysis, should be supplied on submission and published as supplementary material. 100% agreement on that, too.
So really opening up the black box of analysis.
Exactly. It's about enabling independent verification. Show your work. It directly tackles potential data manipulation, makes research genuinely reproducible, and, crucially, strong agreement, over 90%, that journals need clear published policies for handling integrity concerns. Whether they pop up during peer review or later, that's been a real gap.
Right, and funding transparency.
Absolutely non-negotiable. 100% agreement on transparent reporting of author interests and funding sources. Then you've got editorial and peer review guidance. The idea here is to be more proactive.
Okay, what does that look like?
Strong agreement, over 80%, that editors and reviewers should routinely check the reported methods against the registered protocol. Basic cross-checking.
Makes sense. Does it actually happen now?
Not always consistently. They also recommended routine basic integrity checks, like checking baseline data reproducibility during peer review. That one had a bit less consensus, around 64%, maybe reflecting practical challenges. But importantly, there was strong agreement, over 83%, that if misconduct is proven in a manuscript, that information should be shared with other journals in that field.
So stopping bad studies from just getting published elsewhere.
Precisely, a collective responsibility aspect. Now, for investigations when concerns are raised, the consensus was crystal clear. Investigations have to be independent and competent. Very importantly, the person making the complaint or their team shouldn't be involved in the investigation itself.
Okay, maintaining objectivity.
Exactly. And senior editors handling complaints, no conflicts of interest. Strong agreement there, too, 80%. And this is powerful. Investigating misconduct shouldn't depend on how famous the institution is or how senior the researcher is. Over 90% agreed. Integrity applies equally to everyone.
That's a really important principle. No one's above scrutiny.
Mm-hmm. Finally, decisions and sanctions. Here it's a bit more nuanced than just punishment. The consensus leaned towards focusing sanctions on fixing the root causes of bad research practices. About 73% agreement. It suggests a move towards improving the system, not just blaming individuals.
So corrective rather than purely punitive.
Kind of, yeah. A desire to fix the environment. And interestingly, there was strong agreement, 80%, that retraction followed by republication could be valid for innocent errors that can't just be fixed with a simple correction note.
So acknowledging honest mistakes happen and providing a path to fix the record properly.
Exactly. It allows for correction without necessarily ending a career over a genuine mistake, while still ensuring the scientific record is accurate.
This all sounds incredibly thorough, really comprehensive. But I can imagine getting, 48 experts from 18 countries on the same page? That can't have been easy. Were there tricky areas, points of debate?
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't always straightforward. I mean, they aimed for consensus, but the process itself acknowledged subjectivity. That's why they used that 7-point scale initially to capture nuance. The final statements represent the majority view, sure, but some disagreement is natural, and it was definitely there on certain points.
And these are guidelines, right? Not laws.
That's a key point. They offer guidance, a framework. They're not strict, mandated rules. How they get implemented will need to be practical, tailored by different journals, institutions, funders. For example, that 100% agreement on providing statistical syntax. Great principle, but some journals or researchers might face technical hurdles implementing it immediately. But the core idea, transparency and analysis, is what matters.
Okay. What about those seemingly obvious points? You mentioned one earlier.
Right, the self-evident statements,
Yeah.
like requiring a declaration that data was obtained ethically. It got decent agreement, around 68%, but you'd think it would be 100%, right?
Yeah, seems like a baseline requirement.
It does. But the source brings up the Tuskegee syphilis trial. Horrific ethical violations, never properly retracted. It's a stark reminder why even foundational principles need constant reinforcement. You can't take them for granted.
That's a chilling example. Okay. What else was tricky?
Well, there was a statement flagged as potentially controversial. It was about applying red flags when screening integrity complaints.
Red flags. Meaning what?
Meaning looking carefully at the credibility and motives of everyone involved, including the person making the complaint. The idea is to filter out frivolous or malicious allegations that waste resources, but the panel itself noted they might have had an underrepresentation of whistleblowers. So it's a delicate balance. How do you protect researchers from unfair attacks while still empowering genuine whistleblowers? That's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, that sounds like a really fine line to walk.
It is. Another area of debate was how systematic reviews should handle RCTs that have known integrity concerns. Should they just be kicked out entirely? The consensus landed on routinely presenting a separate analysis excluding those studies. Maximum transparency for now, because frankly, the tools to definitively assess integrity are still being developed and validated.
So it connects to needing better tools.
Exactly. Which is why there was strong agreement, eventually, on the need for future research to validate these integrity tests, validate methods for spotting data fabrication, falsification, and so on. And finally, open science. Things like prospective registration are pretty standard now. But other areas, like validating these specific integrity checks for trial design and analysis, still need work. There's actually a statement on that which failed the first consensus round but passed later. It shows this is an evolving field. The consensus itself evolved, recognizing it's a journey, not a final destination.
Right, so putting this all together, our deep dive really shows that fixing research integrity, especially for clinical trials, is complex. It's an ongoing fight. But there's clearly a major coordinated effort underway. This Cairo Consensus Statement, it feels like more than just an academic paper. It's really a call to action, isn't it, for the whole scientific world?
Precisely. It gives everyone involved, journals, institutions, funders, regulators, a common framework to actually work together. But the framework is just the start. Implementing these guidelines, investing in the necessary training, the technology, that's what's essential now. That's how we start rebuilding public confidence in RCTs. And ultimately, it's about ensuring that you, the patient, the person relying on this research, get treatments that are safe, effective, and based on evidence we can actually trust.
So thinking about all this, knowing how deeply linked research integrity is to our health, how might you, listening now, engage more critically with the research you come across, even the small details? What questions might you start asking about the transparency behind the science that shapes so much of our world?